Welcome once again to Inside the Zoo. I'm Clint Schweitzer, joined by former Tiger Steve Redmond. Steve, we may not be joined by a couple current Tigers here on the show today, but if that is the case, then that's okay because we got a couple things to talk about here on Inside the Zoo. It's a different kind of a show here, and I'm cool with just getting our comments if need be. Steve, we were talking before we went off the air, we went on the air. Obviously, Mizzou fans that are joining the broadcast right now, you're all still kind of lingering from probably the sting of defeat. And maybe even some of you, just the pride of having hung in there with the number one team in the nation. But Steve, as we've had a couple days to marinate on this, looking back on the 26-22 loss to the Georgia Bulldogs, what kind of emotions are you having? Do you feel like it's a missed opportunity that got away? Are you proud of the way the team played, or kind of a combination of all the emotions like I am?
I think, as a Mizzou fan, it is hard to have a game like we had against the Georgia Bulldogs last week and not be experiencing a range of emotion. And I'll do my best in my brief spiel to kind of articulate where I'm at. I think this weekend we proved how outstanding our defense is. We played several games and we've seen flashes of, look at that player, man, we're swarming to the ball. But to be able to play the game that we played against the Georgia Bulldogs as a defense was amazing. And I am nothing but proud of how those boys showed up and played that game. From the offensive standpoint, we got a lot of work to do, man. It was disappointing just because, as we had talked about before, you can't – you're playing, and I know, this isn't plan A, but you can't nickel and dime or three-point your way to wins in the SEC. It's just can't be your main mode of scoring. So, and, I mean, the score shows that, 26-22. Had we scored one more touchdown, if nothing else, we go to overtime. And not lose a heartbreaking 4-point game. And then, lastly, for me, being a former player, this is just a culmination of the reality, man. It's hard to win. Like I told you before, Coach Pinkel would tell us that all the time. In my 5 years playing for Coach Pinkel, and shout out to GP for the honor and getting his name. On the wall. That was beautiful to see that, man, because, nobody's more deserving of that and what he did for us at the University of Missouri. But he would always tell us, winning is tough. And like I said, it sounds stupid when you say it like, duh, but like when you think about every single thing that goes into winning a football game, and I know us as Mizzou fans get to see the glaring flaws of hey, we're on the half-yard line and we get a false start. Hey, it's hard to win when you're getting penalties that are costing you critically in the game, right? Just the discipline, the execution, all of that stuff that goes into winning, not to mention at the level of competition we're playing. That's kind of where I left it is, man, it's just hard. And it sucks when you get so close and you lose, man.
Yeah, and just not only that, a lot of the players that we've had on this year throughout the show that's been brought to you by Horns Down Mizzou, they've had their NIL players that have been on here with us all year, the Dalen Carnells, the Ennis Rakestraws, the Chris Abrams Drains, the Martez Manuels. I mean, they showed out. This defense, like you said, proving that they're a top end right now SEC defense, living in the backfield, limiting – with the Georgia Bulldogs, I mean, when you look at Georgia's offense, it really runs through the passing game, runs through their two tight ends. Right. And I thought Missouri did a great job on Bowers and Washington. Darnell Washington is a 6'7", 270-pound tight end that he only had 3 catches in the game. Brock Bowers had 5 for 66. Those are NFL players. Brock Bowers is going to be the top NFL top tight end in the draft, more than likely. So many positives, and I want to go to you on this as well. We talked about trying to compare things, and I know it's not always fair to just compare seasons one to another, but if we're talking about the time period in which you played, which was 04 to 08, right now this is starting to feel like the 04 season, which was a season that had expectations and a lot of just dogfight, close losses, and you got players out there trying to build something, and you're not getting rewarded for it within the win column. How difficult is that as a player to keep grinding and to keep looking at next week and just to put that behind you? Because gosh, that's just got to be a tough feeling, especially for these defensive players that are just leaving it out on the field right now.
Yeah, man, it here and you know, man, I'm thankful. I want to say this to you publicly, man. I'm thankful to be on the show because I feel like I get to speak a little bit for what the players can't get on here and say. It's damn hard. It's damn hard when you think about everything that goes into getting ready for a season, the summer workouts. And I mean, if you wanted to start at the top of the year, you go through spring ball, you go through the summer workouts, you go through two-a-days, and then you get to the actual season where every single game counts for your campaign, and you have these ups and downs. From a simple standpoint, it makes it hard to get momentum towards the goal, momentum mentally, and as well as just the physical continuity of how the offense runs, how a defense runs. And it's hard because you got to flush it. You got a limited amount of time to flush it and get ready for the next week. And things don't necessarily bounce back that quickly. You know, the physical toll, man, I'm thinking about JC. I saw him run in there and put some hits on some folks and get hit. You know, physically, you're trying to recover as quickly as you can. Mentally, you know, you do start to think about
what's this all for? What are we doing this for? Right? Like,
you know, but then, you know, what it ultimately is going to come down to, and I think this is what we're going to see throughout the rest of the year, because it's not getting any easier, right? What the culture of the locker room is like. That's really that's the only thing you can fall back on when you say how hard is it. It's as hard as the culture is strong in your locker room. You know, and we've alluded to that with some of the guys of like, what's the language like? You know, what are you guys talking about? How, like, where's your head at? We're going to really see where the whole team is, you know, in terms of the culture and what they're saying to each other coming up against Florida, man.
Yeah, you're right. That's coming right up. So Saturday against the Florida Gators, you go on the road to the Swamp, as if this hasn't been already more difficult. You got to go play a Florida team that did upset Utah week 1. That was a ranked team. They stayed in there. You know, they're right there with Kentucky, right there with Tennessee. Both of those losses both teams pulled away late. So Florida's a very capable team, but a beatable team. Missouri's going in as, I think, an 11-point underdog. Missouri fans need something. Steve, I was talking to some people, you know, big time fans, some donors of the school, and we're like, when's the last time? And maybe it was Saturday, even in a loss, that you just stood up with immense pride and had something to really cheer about. And you go back years and you think about, this team's been a 500 team since 2019. In 2018, Missouri was 8-4 with Drew Lock and won at the Swamp actually that year in a big upset. That was a great moment. But since then, it's been little moments, little beats. You beat Florida last year. So go in there again. Missouri answered the bell after the Auburn loss, which, as we know, was just completely devastating and really unbelievable. So now you got to go to the Swamp on the road. Can you bring the same energy you brought when number 1 was in your backyard with 58,000 people? How difficult is it now to go on the road and try to replicate this energy?
Well, dude, it's not an easy task.
Yeah.
I mean, what is the Swamp? The Swamp holds 100,000, 98,000,
like 90,
something like
yeah.
that. You know, something like that. And it's going to be hostile because that is a team that, like you said, we were just ranked. We're very capable. And the 2 teams we lost to are both, I don't know if, is Tennessee in the top 10 now?
Yeah.
So, like, the 2 teams we lost to are like top 10 teams. We're no slouch. And you then look across the other way at us. And again, it's going to come down to this. And I'm going to say this for the rest of the season. What is our locker room culture? Because that is what drives everything. That drives the relationships. That drives and that's player to player. That's player to coach. What drives that dynamic? And what is that culture that says, hey, yep, we lost a tough one and we bounced back and we're going down to the swamp and we're going to get a W and we're going to get this thing on track. I know for us, and in that time that I played at Mizzou, we were hardened by so many different factors, so many factors that a lot of people overlook. We as the general public right now, this is why I'm saying it's the culture in the locker room, because I know this. We had a culture shift. My class, Ruck's class, the 03 class, and 04 class, there was a culture shift. We were bringing in winners. I'm used to winning. I went to Rockhurst High School. I'm used to winning. Or like, I only lost 5 high school football games. Like, that losing wasn't a thing. Like, hey, we just go up here and lose. There was a lot of guys like that coming in. So that was a thing, battling the own internal culture of change. Then, Aaron O'Neal passed. That was tough, right? Then, we keep going and going in terms of we were so hardened and strengthened by what we had been through as a collective group, coaches and players. By the time we get to 07, there wasn't much of anything that we were looking at saying, oh, we're not going to do this. And I mean, and that's the one thing that I'm proud of is like the energy that was in that place. We felt like we could run over anything and anybody. And we loved the underdog feeling. And that's the kind of culture we were living through. That's the kind of culture that produced what the Mizzou fans got to experience at that time. So now when you go down to the swamp, my hope is we have a similar culture in the locker room now that says, yeah, you know what? We lost a tough one. We could have played better on offense, defense. We played our asses off and we didn't get it done. Now we're going to go get it done this week.
Man, you talk about culture and you think about, Brady Cook in this game, I thought, was an efficient, if not unspectacular 20 of 32, 192 yards and a touchdown. Okay. You talk about culture and you talk about the collective mindset of a team. How about between the offense and the defense? Do you see discourse happen? I think back to 2004. I mean, of course, at that time, how can you have that? You have Brad Smith, at the helm at quarterback. And I know things kind of went off the rails and it seemed like that there was some play calling issues and some turmoil that was happening. I remember some players that I'm not going to name because they're no longer with us that were very upset after a game about the play calling. And another tough loss was Oklahoma State and it was Kansas State and the losses just piled up. How's that dynamic between the offense and defense? Is there a chance that dynamic goes south? Have you seen it happen?
There's always a chance for some things like that to happen. Man, here's what we can't forget. And here's how I want to, bring this into. Everybody wants to do well. At the end of the day, everybody wants to go out there and play their best game. Everybody from the coaches down feel like they're prepared. And then, as old Mike Tyson used to say, everybody got a plan so you get punched in the mouth, right? And then from there, what happens? Then we're now having to fall back on what? The culture, like I've said. And when you look at the dynamics, I think it's possible. I remember our dynamic was, I say love in the genuine, most truest sense, but it was competitive, ultra competitive. And here's where things tend to go south is when I'm carrying more of the load and I feel like for whatever reason, there's something on that side of the ball not happening. Do they have the relationships to address that openly? Because I tell you this, Chase Daniel had no problem calling out whoever he wanted to when the defense wasn't looking how they needed to. And not because he was I don't know if you saw Coach Pinkel's tweet talking about Chase wasn't the friendliest, but basically like because he knows I need the defense at the highest level possible when we go play whoever.
I think the term's competitive prick.
Yeah.
That's what Eric Bieniemy says about Patrick Mahomes. So that plays, that works.
and there's that dynamic that exists where we have to be able to confront each other as well as encourage each other to be the best that we're capable of being. And so while I say yes, it's possible, the hope is it's more that dynamic of offense. We know y'all are capable of more. We know you can bring more firepower. let's get this thing done and get this on the right track.
Well, that was, a game that was going to be tough to do that. Georgia, even though they had, I think it was, I was at the draft in Vegas, 5 or 6 first-round players off that defense from last year. Even though they lost that talent, they're still, Kirby Smart has built just a juggernaut there at the University of Georgia. They finally got over the hump last year. They beat Alabama to win the national championship. They're the defending champions, and here you are with a chance to do that. It's very rare. Missouri has never beaten a number one. Now, they did beat in 2010, a couple years after you, a BCS number one, which was Oklahoma. And to me, you just, tomato, you kind of that to me, that would count certainly as a win over a number one, but an opportunity, perhaps it's hard to say an opportunity missed because those games, Georgia hasn't trailed all season until Saturday. They hadn't trailed a moment of play. And they dropped to number 2, I think, in some of the polls here after that. So we'll see where things go. I still think Georgia has a very good trajectory. And so does this destroy you? Does it help you? I think that Missouri earned a lot of respect. And not only that, Steve, what we saw was a near sellout crowd here, which is very important. This is the largest crowd in 3 years. Granted, one of the years you couldn't have fans in there or any more than 5,000 or whatever.
Right.
2019 against Ole Miss, 53,000. This is the largest crowd since dating back to 2018. So this is the environment at Mizzou at Ferro Field. You've been there, you know what it's like, but we haven't seen it in quite a while. Yeah. Does this maybe signal that this Mizzou fan base they're not giving up? They're here, they're showing up for these big games, and we know what it feels like when big games are here, and that we just so desperately want to feel that again every time someone walks onto this field to play this team.
How I look at stuff like that, Clint, is I've learned hard enough lessons to not get wrapped up in the emotional pieces of it. And that's because when 2004, I would see people leave in the third quarter. I would see people leave at halftime, right? The thing that we can do to cultivate that energy that we want is to play an outstanding brand of football and to win. Winning, man, it's easy, dude. Excuse me. I'm not trying to contradict what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's simple, but it's not easy. Meaning, winning cures everything.
Yeah.
If we're a winning football team, people are going to show up. People are going to want to be there. And, at the end of the day, I say that not condemning, the Tigers now. We've been through it. I remember what it was like when we weren't winning. People would show up and then they would be gone by halftime or early in the third quarter. And it took time and it took winning to rebuild that trust and energy, if you want to call it that. And I have faith that if we go down here to Florida and get our job done, and then we come back and we get the job done again, people will start filling up the stadium because it is a wonderful electric environment when the fans do their part, and make it that.
And you want to see this group of players succeed. You feel that they're giving their energy and everything that they're doing for this program. Luther Burden's here. Granted, that's a whole other podcast about what's going on there. Maybe not quite getting him the ball enough. Maybe he's trying to do too much. When he gets the ball, okay, there's that. Dominic Lovett, who's led the SEC in receiving yards coming into this. I thought him getting hurt was a big blow. But the fans want to see these players and these guys succeed. I'll tell you, Steve, straight up, I've only left 2 games early in my life. Sadly, one of them was the season you're referencing, 2004, and it was the KU game. Do you remember that?
I remember.
That was the most lifeless. All the rest, God, we lost Oklahoma State, blew a 17-3 lead. That was a good team, Oklahoma State, 3-point loss. Kansas State was, I think, a 17-3 lead that they came back. And those are all competitive. That Kansas game was a complete anomaly, and it was just I couldn't handle it anymore. I could not handle them beating us the way they were. And the other one, funny enough, was 2010, the Mo Miracle. Steve, I was walking out of the stadium as TJ Moe. So, but I've learned, come on. Since then, I've transitioned. It's hard. You have your former player role as a former player. I transitioned into being in the media. And so I cover the games, you know, in the press box. You know, you can't be in there cheering and acting like an idiot like I was in 2004, you know, in the stands. So it's just different. You grow, and plus you get older, it's different. Things are different. But
yeah, man.
All that being said, I think everybody just wants what's best and wants to see this program, you know, back to that level. And that's been the frustrating part as a fan.
100%, man. And I mean, you know, you had mentioned something earlier that I always find interesting, and I check myself a lot of times, just realizing like some people don't think like athletes. You know, I'm a former athlete. My DNA is
It'll always
competitive.
be with
But you said something about, you know, standing in pride and, you know, all of that stuff. Some donors and all of that stuff. Thinking about it, and you know, at the end of the day, for me, when I look at it, it's like we have to shift our thinking from, again, the moral victory, and start really dumping our eggs and getting comfortable with the fact that we expect to win. And as close as we played that game, it wasn't good enough. And I don't mean that to say, you know, you poo poo on a young quarterback, or you poo poo on a defense and you're unrealistic about it. I am tired of seeing us not win. Like I want us to experience the success that we should. We're like I've told you before, we have always been a first-class university. We have always done things to the highest standard. And then it's like we get to the field and we just miss the mark just a little bit. And it's exhausting. And it's been happening historically. I don't have the answer for it. I'm not going to sit here and say, I know what this is why the fifth down happened and this is why the kick happened. No, I don't know. But it's like, man, I want us to be able to go out and execute at the highest levels. I want the fans to be the best fans in the country. I want it all. And, you know, that might be me being a psychopath former athlete that's a high performer. But, like, that's what I want to see, man. I want it for the guys on the team. I want it for the coaches. I want it for Mizzou country, Mizzou nation. And, you know, and I want to rewrite that narrative, man. However we got to get that done.
And Steve, this state is unique. This university is unique. You talked about it being a top flight university. There is, you know, Missouri is a kind of a place unto its own. You know, it's the only Division I FCS program, Power 5 program in the state. So you got two major cities on each side. You're bordered by 7 states. There's a lot of influence. You know, we're from Kansas City. You went to Rockhurst. I went to Winnetonka. You go to school with K-State fans, with KU fans, with Nebraska fans. You go down, if you're in Springfield, you got Oklahoma and Arkansas. You go up north, you got Iowa and Nebraska. It's just, and you know, on the St. Louis side, the Big Ten, Illinois, Northwestern,
right,
Notre Dame. I mean, it's just, this state is so unique. And I think it was back in the 80s, there was a sports reporter that referred to Missouri as a sleeping giant. And it took a long time to get there, man. So,
yeah,
you know, it was, though. I mean, you guys stood on the field at Arrowhead Stadium in November, Thanksgiving weekend, 2007, as the number 1 team in the nation. You've shown it. It can be done. It can be done here. That you guys reached the mountaintop, and I know it was for 1 week, and
right.
That was the proudest week. It was the best week of my life, and I'm a big Chiefs fan. I've experienced a Super Bowl, which was second only to what that 2007 team did and winning that Kansas game. You'll never know what that meant to Mizzou fans. You're from Kansas City, you get it. So, you know, I mean, I know I'm throwing a lot at you here, but man, we have seen the American dream. Dusty Rhodes once said, "We've wined and dined with kings and queens, and we've slept in alleys and dined on pork and beans." This university, man, you've seen it all, but it is very unique.
Yeah. Yes. And that's why when I think about the history I've been a part of, the history that, you know, you learn, you know, when you're a part of, you know, the University of Missouri, you know, as an athlete, you know, we've had some highs, we've had some lows, we've had some low lows, and, you know, we're waiting on that pinnacle historic moment that takes us into another stratosphere that opens. If I wish I had a board, man. I'm like a diagrammer, man. I wish I could draw it up, but like every pinnacle that you reach, it opens another, gap for you to move to the next one, right? So like when we were struggling to beat K-State and Colorado and all of that stuff, once we got that victory over, K-State, once we got that victory over Colorado, it was almost like there was now room to press towards the next thing, whatever that next thing was. For us, we would talk a lot about the division, the North Division, winning the North Division. We did that. The one thing that we missed out on, although we were a half away from going to a national championship, was we missed out on the Big 12 championship as well, right? But we had opened that gap for us to grow and press towards that. And I think in the SEC, not only is it just extremely difficult to go out and win, like I say, but, thinking about all of the little things that you have to do, when you start to realize those little gaps, you start to realize, oh, Georgia is a juggernaut. Alabama is a juggernaut. And we have some work to do in terms of being able to get to that spot where, we can not just overcome once, right? Not just overcome once, but like, hey, we're here. This is Mizzou, and you have to put respect on our name every single week.
And you got to earn that, and that's what we'll see. And I think that Saturday's a big one because, to me, a loss against the Florida Gators, and you start looking and mathematically not a great path to getting back to a bowl game. And that's sort of a pretty low benchmark when you think about, this team's we've been bowl eligible now for, since 17, 18, 19, 20, like, 4 straight seasons. Didn't get to go play in a bowl game, one, because of a ridiculous, sanction back in 19. So Kelly Bryant comes, couldn't play in a bowl game. And then in 20, our bowl game got canceled due to COVID. So I think Missouri might be the only team ever to be bowl eligible 2 straight seasons and not be able to play in one of them. So but this team deserves for people to be following and seeing what's going on. You see the recruiting, and hopefully it just keeps getting better from there. And Steve, this has been a unique perspective. This has been a unique show. I'm glad we got to do it this way because we love talking to the current players, but there's a certain level that you have to hold back because you're not running these guys through the ringer. These aren't pro athletes, even though there is NIL now and they're part of an NIL collective. These guys aren't up here to be grilled about every single thing they do. Like Tom Brady. Tom Brady's up here after losing and he's getting divorced and all this personal stuff. I mean, good example, right? I mean, I can't relate. I don't know, but it's as we are doing this show, just Steve and I this time, we also are hoping, Steve, and I wanted to bring this up coming up, that we want to do a show that kind of is maybe turns into kind of a reunion of players from your era. We were able to do it a little bit last year because I did a show with James Franklin, Henry Josie, and so we were able to bring back players from that era. And I think that would be tremendous to do. So, Steve, I think we need to get to work on that and make that happen. If you're up for it, I mean, unless you don't have any friends left from those teams.
No, I got friends and they listen. And, for me, the big thing is, one, I want to just address quickly, like, absolutely, man, this show is great. And it's fun to be able to talk to the guys. But this is also what I am very deliberate about is also, like, I know what those shoes feel like, man. I know what it's like when you go out there and you don't play your best game. And there's people over here saying, all of the negative and worst stuff you can ever imagine. There's people on the other side that believe you can do no wrong. And then there's the people in the middle that just want to see us do the best that we can possibly do and win. And, you always want to protect the players and put them in a position to make sure that they can just go out there and play. I think that's what we do on here, man. We just, we want to help them, get some exposure. We want to, talk to them and And,
Yes.
just keep them encouraged and keep them moving down the right path. Because at the end of the day, here's the one thing that I'll say about Mizzou Nation, and then I'll answer your question.
Yeah.
Like, we're loyal.
You have to be.
Whether people say we're gluttons for punishment or we're just crazy, we are loyal, and we always stand by our team, and we always stand. We show up, we watch it, and no matter how bad it hurts sometimes, and we're always going to do that, man. So 100%. And then I'll say, I got guys, man. They listen to the show. They're blowing my phone up now, and we'll definitely get some guys together and hop on a call, man, and do a little reunion from that era and see what we come up with.
I'm all about it. We've already been throwing some names around. We won't throw out any yet because we got some scheduling to do, and it's always hard to get schedules together and things like that. But one guy I know we got to get, and that's your former teammate from Rockhurst, Tony Temple. I don't think I've ever had a chance to ask you about Tony. He's one of my favorite people. He has, he does personal training up here. I think my sister trained with him for a while. I know that my feeble 38-year-old receding hairline self couldn't hang with Tony. But what a great running back. And just, man, I think he was, what was that award? Back then they had Simone Award winner back at Rockhurst High School. You guys were the same grade.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
yeah, you guys graduated.
A lot of people don't know this. Maybe they do. Me and Tony are family. So
I did not.
Me and Tony, we grew up playing ball together. Like, we started playing ball together when we were like 9 or 10, football and basketball primarily, and then we ran a little track together. Went to school together, 7th and 8th grade, all throughout Rockhurst and in the college, man. So,
man,
dude was a beast, man. I feel like he was, me and him were always two of the bigger kids on the teams that we played on.
I bet.
So that was always fun. And, just as, we got into high school, man, he was setting records. He was breaking through, man. History, first freshman to ever play varsity football at Rockhurst. And then from there, the story is the story, man. So he was a phenomenal athlete, man, and just a hell of a player all around, man. So
God, just recruiting, back then isn't what it is now, where you have all these recruiting services and 4-stars. I think maybe just started kind of happening around that time. And I remember just Tony Temple being like a celebrity. I remember seeing him at a Chiefs game in his Rockhurst leather jacket, and I was like, he was like a local celebrity.
Yeah,
and to get him to Mizzou, I was like, oh my God, like this is great. And then just the Cotton Bowl record against Arkansas, and they had Felix Jones, and we've interviewed, I'll tell you this, Steve, I don't know if you knew this, but we went down and we interviewed Peyton Hillis from Arkansas from that team. Okay. Peyton Hillis, Felix Jones, and Darren McFadden in the same backfield, and Tony Temple outrushed them all.
Stole the show. And
right?
Here's what's funny. I felt like Tony was capable of doing that at any moment, in any game. You know what I mean? Like, I know we were pass heavy and it was crazy.
Yeah.
That team that the teams that we had were so loaded. Like, you really couldn't go wrong throwing the ball to any particular person. And I felt like our backfield just kind of took second fiddle to, Chase Daniel, Brad Smith show with the receiving corps we had, especially them tight ends.
Oh God.
But the talent that Tony had, at any given moment, that opportunity was there, man. And it was just that perfect time, that swan song type experience for him to lay it all out there like that in the Cotton Bowl, man.
And, Cody Schrader had the big run that got us down to the 1. Tony Temple on his last run pulled the hamstring, I think, and still got into the end zone, though. That he didn't end at the 1-yard line. He got into the end zone. That was what was cool about that. And just there's so many memories and so many things that we'll continue to share because I like going back. I mean, that to me, I don't know that I'd be here doing what I do. I mean, I do the sports for a living. I sit here and talk about the Chiefs, talk about college football, Mizzou. That's what I do. And it's because of teams like your guys, players like you, Steve, players that came from, this state, that came from Texas. That was such a huge stronghold back then, and that formed this identity here. And Coach Pinkel's been a part of this. He's been on this show several times. We love Coach Pinkel, and, great. Like you said, get to see him honored at the game. And just tremendous. Guys, I know this wasn't your typical show here, and I thought it was tremendous, Steve, to be able to share the insight. I do want to throw up our a graphic here for our friends there at Horns Down Mizzou. You got the gear. That was the shirts on here is homecoming's coming up October 22nd against Vanderbilt. Get your homecoming gear. You've got your hometown hero there, Martez Manuel, and your Chris Abrams drain. No fly zone, which was a very appropriate term here these last few weeks. Chris Abrams drain. I saw somebody on Power Mizzou say, name me a better defensive player right now that's playing in the SEC. Chris Abrams drain is just an eraser over there at the cornerback position. So we're grateful to have those guys.
Man.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
They're getting there. I mean, I was saying this to my wife and texting, the guys I talked to when we're playing, and the way our secondary was playing so aggressively, was amazing. It was not only noticeable, but I was just like, wow, like you got to be a certain type of way to just run in there and try to put the hat on somebody like that, man. And that was impressive. So the boys are playing, man. We just got to get it all lined up and get it clicking on all cylinders. Well,
for Steve Redmond and Clint Schweitzer, we thank you so much for being a part of Inside the ZOU. And again, the last few episodes weren't made available. We had some technical issues last week, and then we had a week or two where Steve was able to join us. So this week's show, it's available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's always great to take it in the audio portion as you're at the gym or on a long drive or something like that. So we want to make that available for you guys. I know that not everyone just likes to stare at our beautiful shining faces all the time, but we do have it available in audio form. So Steve, thank you so much, my friend. We'll be back next week. Missouri's heading to a bye, so we'll see what next week brings. Thank you so much, my friend, and we will catch you next week, man.
All right. Sounds good, boss man.
Thank you.